From Fox 8 Sports, this is the Overtime Podcast.
From the Fox 8 studios in New Orleans, this is the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast. I'm Vasilios, that's Sean Fazan. Remember to rate, subscribe, like, review. All of that helps in us getting you more content to consume. Sean, what are we going to be discussing today, my man?
Yeah, well, good Monday to everyone. Hope you had a nice weekend. I had a nice weekend, pretty low-key, relaxing weekend in the city of New Orleans. But we have now entered the second week of free agency. And like you mentioned, be sure to download, rate, review, subscribe. Our YouTube channel, we've been posting those on the Fox 8 YouTube channel right now. At some point, we're going to get our Fox 8 Overtime YouTube channel up and running, but until that time comes, you can find the video there as well as on our website, and, of course, the audio wherever you listen to your podcast. So, we are now here, the first wave, second wave. What constitutes a wave? I don't know. When does the first wave end, the second wave begin, the third wave? The first week is done. Yeah. The first week of NFL free agency is done. I thought it'd be a nice time right here to reset the table, see where the Saints stand, and see what could be coming down the road here in the immediate future, and then a couple weeks, months down the road as well with the New Orleans Saints. So I got it. I got it all right here. I went through everything right here. I went through it all, and so let's just go through it. I mean, we've got a little time here. It's a little bit of a sweet spot in the calendar in terms of just the rush of the first wave of free agency is over. Things have slowed a little bit, as they always do. There's always that little sweet spot between free agency, extravaganza, if you will, and the draft coming up, and the pre-draft when it really kicks back up here in the next month or so. I guess the next month when the month turns into from March into April. So let's go through it, shall we?
Let's do it, man.
Let's do it. All right. First off, let's start at the quarterback position. The Saints have Derek Carr. They have Jameis Winston. And they have a practice squad player, Jake Luton. He was kind of off and on the roster a season ago. And you can pencil in Taysom Hill right here, but I have him officially listed in another slot. But so Derek Carr, Jameis Winston, Jake Luton, and Taysom Hill in the Taysom Hill role that we know. We have discussed this. They are in better shape at this position than they were a season ago. You have a top-end starter. At the very least, you have a backup quarterback that has a lot of experience, a lot of starts under his belt. Now, his career has been a little up and down, but maybe, just maybe, this is where Jameis Winston needs to be at this point of his career, coming off the injuries he has been dealing with, and just sort of the I guess you call it bad luck since he's been in New Orleans. I think the question is, though, you have Derek Carr stability. You have Jameis Winston as a 2 is stable, in my opinion. I think, him and Andy are what and what in terms of backup quarterback. But I think you can – what is a backup quarterback? Well, a backup quarterback is a guy that can come in a short period of time and help keep your team afloat. I think Jameis can do that. I don't know if he's still the guy that can lead a team for 17 games. And then, obviously, with the practice squad and Ludon. I think the question is, if the Saints have a chance to draft a quarterback that they like, will they do it? And would that quarterback then have a chance to become the number 2 quarterback with the Saints? Let me start by saying I don't think the Saints will shy away from the idea of drafting a quarterback. It's just not going to be in the first round. I don't think they have a player graded in the neighborhood of where they're going to pick that would be worthy of first-round pick consideration. And B, obviously, you signed Derek Carr and you even brought back Jameis Winston. The question is, when does that idea of potentially drafting the quarterback become a reality? Could you do it at 40? I don't know. Maybe. But it seems like 29 and 40, that's two. You might be able to find 2 day one starters there, or at least very valuable rotational pieces. I think it would more than likely happen at 71. For that player to have a realistic shot at maybe competing at some point and being the backup. If Hendon Hooker slipped, if Tanner Mackey slipped, And I'd gotten a word of a small school quarterback that perhaps they were kind of looking at. I don't know A, who that small school quarterback is, and B, that sounds like a day 3 guy, so I wouldn't put that in the mix here. But to me, if McKee and Hendon Hooker were available at 71, I think that would be something that they could certainly use and possibly use a pick on. And look, if that player were to come in and show some potential, could they possibly bump Winston to be the number 2? Long shot, it would probably more likely they'd be the number 3 for that first year, but maybe at some point they could, because remember, it's only a 1-year deal for Jameis Winston. Mm-hmm. So I think that player could eventually have a future, and we'll see what happens. And I think in Hooker's case, he's already 25 years old. Is that correct?
I believe so. I can confirm right now.
So
but
he's an older prospect, and if he's going to be a guy that is taken early and not start right away, I can see how that, along with the injury, has caused a little bit of hesitation. He's 25 years old, okay?
Yep.
To perhaps slip a little bit. But as a potential backup, and who knows what could happen after that, I could certainly see him being worth the risk at some point. Again, I'm circling the 3rd-round pick. Let's move on. Running back. This is an interesting group. You have Kamara.
Mm-hmm.
You have the newly signed Jamal Williams on a very favorable deal.
Great signing.
You have Adam Prentice. You have Eno Benjamin. And you have a couple of practice squad guys. I didn't go through every practice squad guy, but this was Derek Gore was a practice squad guy. Here's the thing with that. That looks great on the surface, your front line, but you're going to need depth. Kamara is a guy that's obviously going to face a suspension. Williams is a guy that they brought in. So the question there is, do they add to that room? I say absolutely they add to that room. They need another player, quality player, to bring that room up a little bit and give them some versatility and give them just some options at a position that can be very brutal when it comes to injuries.
Yeah, no, I agree. You could have another veteran face in there, probably not too old, though. Jamal Williams himself is 28, and he's your traditional power back. He thrived in red zone opportunities last year for the Lions. Obviously, we talked about it last podcast with 17 touchdowns, and with Kamara missing time, that's going to make a lot of wear and tear on Jamal Williams. So you're going to need a guy that's able to come in there and offer at least a little bit of production in relief.
Yeah, so. And I look at the 2nd round as it looks like everything I've been studying about this draft. That's where it's setting up nicely for potential for the Saints to grab a quality running back that can find their way onto the field. I love Jahmyr Gibbs at Alabama. He's kind of in that 1st round, 2nd round ish range. I love Tajay Spears. 40 might be high for him, but I know I know that the Tajay camp is comfortable in saying that they think he can get into the 2nd round.
I think everybody here loves Tajay.
Everybody
Spears,
loves
man.
Tajay. I mean, what's not to love? And he would love to play here. He said that as much as pro day. So I think that's a spot to really look. But they had some success with day 3 guys as well at that running back position. But I think that's a spot to add a rookie because I think they got their veteran. I think they got Kamara. They got Prentice, the fullback, Benjamin, and maybe they add a veteran, but I think they will also add a rookie to the mix at some point. Wide receiver, let's move on. You have Michael Thomas, you have Chris Olave, you have Rashid Shaheed. I think we're comfortable in what a rise for Rashid Shaheed. That's your top 3.
I like it. If all 3 of those guys stay healthy, I think that's honestly, I'd say a top 10 3 just group of 3 in the NFL.
So you're upgraded wide receiver if Thomas stays healthy. You're upgraded running back with or without Kamara. Well, I guess you could say without Kamara for a long period of time would not be an upgrade. But right now on paper, and this is on paper, and you're upgraded at quarterback. You also have wide receiver Traquan Smith is still under contract, and he was one that I thought could potentially become a cap casualty because of what they could have saved by cutting him. They kept him around, at least for now. Kirk Merritt, the Destrehan product, and Keith Kirkwood, a guy that's been around for a while, and Kawan Baker. This is, if you look at the draft, it's not the best year for wide receivers, which is it's a little bit of an outlier because it's just, the game has been producing just tons of receivers lately. But it's never out of the realm of possibility to draft one. Could they bring one back? I look at Marquez Callaway, one of their own, to potentially bring one back. A guy knows the system. A guy that was productive, but I think he's squarely a number 4 wide receiver. And, if the price is right, they could certainly swing back to him. At tight end, You have Juwan Johnson, Taysom Hill, Adam Troutman, and a couple of practice squad guys. Morris Forstall and Lucas Kroll, who played some games last year, who I really liked. I think they liked the development. Yeah. You could always add to that room because of the versatility of Taysom Hill, and you're talking about Troutman, who's been a little bit up and down. I would say he hasn't flourished into the player that they had hoped. Juwan Johnson's been a fantastic conversion from wide receiver to tight end, but they brought Foster Moreau in for a visit, the former Jesuit product, LSU Tiger, and a guy that played with Derek Carr with the Raiders. Now, they said it's a visit. Maybe he was just back home visiting.
Sure.
He's from New Orleans. But I think he would be a great addition because I think he kind of is what they hope Troutman could be.
Right.
And I don't know. But if you add a guy like Morrow to that room, you could see Troutman being squarely on the hot seat once training camp rolls around and you go through and you're whittling down your 90 to 53. So I think the tight end room is okay. It's about the same as last year.
Yeah, it hasn't changed much, save for Juwan Johnson taking that leap and becoming that playmaker they need, that pass catcher they need there. So, I mean, yeah, it hasn't changed much, but there was some much-needed development.
Moving on, the offensive line has been asked a lot about this, but, you know, when you finally write the names out, you feel pretty good.
Yeah.
Like, you got your entire starting five back, Ramczyk, Ruiz, McCoy, Pete, Hurst. Now, Ruiz, we'll see if they pick up that fifth-year option on him. Pete is someone, as we discussed, I think probably would have been cut had they not pursued Derek Carr. And Pete is the exact type of player that I think it's the little bit of the risk you got to accept when you do this restructure thing, because you got to hold on to a guy that you may want to part ways with a little bit longer, just because the cap space by cutting him is just not as great as restructuring him. I think that's what the case with Andrus Pete. But look at the depth, and it's pretty quality depth. You've got Trevor Penning, a guy they see, obviously, as the future at left tackle. We'll see if he beats out James Hurst, but Hurst gives you versatility. You have Calvin Throckmorton, who started a lot of games, can play guard. Landon Young.
I remember you liked him a lot.
I liked him a lot, the former sixth-round pick. He's a guy that can certainly add some value and contributes on special teams and is also the tackle eligible.
Yep.
Lewis Kidd was a guy that fought his way onto the roster last year as an undrafted rookie, got some game experience, and you have some practice squad guys and Durant and Coda Martin those were futures contracts from a season ago. So that's 10 names. Now, could they always add there? Yes, because the Saints believe in investing in the line of scrimmage, so I would not put it past them. But I'm not sure that's the gotta-have thing that in the draft that some have claimed, because once you really write it out, health is always the great equalizer.
Sure.
And it's an unhealthy position because of the big bodies, tight space. But I feel pretty good about the offensive line. What about you?
Yeah, I don't see right now, like you said, see a need to add to it, but as we progress, you're going to see things from guys you might not like that you might want to move on from. You might want to add some fresh faces to the room, but as of right now, I mean, you don't know who's going to get that job between Penning and Hurst. We still got a long ways to go before we see who's the victor there, if they do.
But if Penning wins that job, he would have beaten out a steady veteran in Hurst, who's not great. He's not great, but he can give you a lot, and he's a guy
consistent.
they trust.
Yeah.
So he would have won that through genuine competition, not given
absolutely.
to him. So I actually, because I thought Hurst might have been someone they sacrificed.
Yeah.
Given who they drafted and given where they were in cap space, but they kept him around, at least for now.
Yeah, he's a great utility guy.
Yes, he can kick inside as well.
Yeah, and so I think right now, if you're the Saints and Dennis Allen, you're feeling pretty good about that room.
Well, and if all things being equal, and they all stay relatively healthy throughout camp, that's going to be a couple of tough cuts, because they generally keep 8 or maybe 9 on the roster, and they dress 7 on game day, depending on matchup. So that's going to be something to watch from a cutting standpoint. All right, let's switch to the defensive side of the ball. Defensive end, Cam Jordan, Carl Granderson, Peyton Turner, Tano Passanio. I don't feel great. This really all depends on the emergence of Peyton Turner. It has to happen.
It has to be. He has to make the Juwan Johnson size leap this year.
It has to. I mean, right now he's not even. There were times last year he was healthy scratch.
Yeah.
Plus, he's dealt with injuries. He has got to really get there. Carl Granderson got more meaningful snaps over him and Marcus Davenport a season ago. So maybe they like the scrappy Carl Granderson opposite of Cam Jordan. Because right now, if I were labeling the starters of that group, it's Jordan and Granderson.
Yeah.
Tano's a nice depth guy you can fill in. But I could see them adding to this either a flex DN, D tackle that can go inside, outside, or looking in the draft. Again, they believe in drafting along the line of scrimmage, and they take a high pick at defensive end. Which leads me to the defensive tackle position. We saw, so let's just call that a wash at defensive end from last year this year.
Yeah, it stays kind of stagnant.
Yeah. Saunders, Shepard, Prince Emili, who was a practice squad futures contract guy. Okay, we've already discussed that we think that this is at the very least a wash from what you got at the position a season ago with those two guys with the potential for an upgrade. But right now, I only named 3 guys, and one of them was a practice squad guy. They have got to add players to this room. You have Malcolm Roach that was on the team a season ago, Kentavious Street. I wonder if those guys they look to now that the market is resettled and, different names emerge to the top. But as much as I like the Saunders and Shepard signings, I'm going. That room is vulnerable until they add, and I think they'll add at least one more veteran and draft a guy possibly high in this draft.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if I had to guess if they had their eyes on a highly touted guy coming out of college in terms of defensive tackle. I think that's probably where you go. I think they're going to go defensive line regardless in the first round. That's just my personal opinion.
Me too. They believe in the defensive line.
Yeah, and so I mean that's usually what the Saints go for, right? Build the trenches. So like you gotta look at that as the starting point, the cornerstone to build the defense again. Yeah, you have Cam Jordan on the outside, but you need that anchor on the inside to make sure you're able to stuff that run and make sure your pass rush is able to get home.
Well, that's it. You got to figure out stylistically what you want because there are a couple of guys that could be available. One's a cat-like quickness, get up the field type, and one's a true run stuffer, and the other one's a little bit of both, but had a down year last year. We'll get into some names a little bit later, but just an FYI for some of y'all. I know you guys like to watch or read mock drafts. I'll have mine up this week, but if you see the Saints linked to an edge player, if you look at the size and speed, height and weight, if they are below 6'4", the Saints are not drafting them. Just keep that in mind when you're looking at mock drafts and you see an edge player linked to the Saints. If they're below 6'4", the Saints do not draft edge linemen shorter than 6'4". They will not do it. They like length on the edge. Just something to keep in mind. All right, moving on. Linebacker room. This is interesting. You have Demario Davis. You have Pete Werner. Mm-hmm. Zach Bond, who I don't know if the conversion's ever going to be anything more than a special teams guy. DeMarco Jackson, the guy from a season ago from Appalachian State, hurt his ACL. And Ty Summers, who they brought back as a special teams guy. I think in its totality, the loss of Caden Ellis brings this group down a little bit. I think they need to add another body that can give you consistent play on defense, not just special teams. I think of Chase Hansen, who's one of their own guys. But I think this is an area where you could see them draft a linebacker as well because it's the perfect thing. You don't need a linebacker to come in and start, but you need a guy that can provide depth at that position. And, with the mixing and matching of certain personnel packages, I think another linebacker with some 3-down ability could certainly help this team. So I think the linebacker room as a whole took a little bit of a dip. So a wash at the end. I want to add bodies at defensive tackle, and I think a little bit of a dip at linebacker. So I think your front 7 might be a little bit lower than where they were a season ago.
Yeah, the linebacker position kind of worries me because Caden Ellis was a great shot in the arm last year, and now that it's another year, Demario may look a little bit slower, a little older. Pete Werner had a good season when he played last year, and he might hit another level this year. So maybe that balances itself out. But
he's got to stay healthy.
Yeah, he absolutely has to stay healthy.
He has to stay healthy.
That was my next point. But both of those guys have to stay healthy if you want any form of consistency at the linebacker position because those guys bounce off each other.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think it's a little bit of a dip, and you need that third guy to kind of come in to be there and be able to come in for relief for one of those.
And
guys.
You got to understand the way the Saints utilize their third down grouping. Sometimes they stay in that dime grouping. Sometimes it's a 4-1-6. Sometimes it's a 3-2-6. Is that right? Yeah, 3-2-6. But you need some versatile guys on the field that can either cover or blitz in that scenario. So you need a guy. I just think you need to add to that room.
Yeah,
I think you need to. Cornerback. Marshawn Lattimore, Paulson Adebo, Bradley Roby, Alante Taylor. If all four of those guys stay healthy, I like that room.
I like
that room a lot.
How do you feel about Paulson Adebo going into this next year?
Look, I know he was battling, and he was a warrior last year. He was not 100% most of the year, but he showed up and played. Was a little bit of a dip. I thought he was going to be an emerging star, but I still trust that he can be the player he was closer to his rookie year, opposite of Marshawn Lattimore. The question is, you got to get Alante Taylor on the field at some point.
I think you're going to be running a lot of 4 cornerback packages.
We'll see. And then look, Bradley Roby is a guy. It depends on if Taylor can play inside or not. But Roby gives you versatility at that position. So I like what the cornerback position is. You're going to add there because you need to keep at least 5 or 6 on your roster. Yeah. So I'm sure there's some practice squad guys that are missing there, the names I didn't necessarily recognize. But could they add more there? Yes,
I was big on Taylor last year because he was so good in run support
and feisty, just fearless, confident. Safety position: Tyrann Mathieu, Marcus May, J.T. Gray, Hugo Amade. Remember Smoke Monday, who tore his ACL last year during camp.
Such a good name.
It really is. I could see them adding here, and I could see them going with a veteran. They still have P.J. Williams available and Daniel Sorensen available. Both those guys can contribute because Sorensen had 2 big picks last year and was a good special teams guy. P.J. Williams has got tremendous versatility. So if I were the Saints, I would look at either one of those 2 guys to bring back. And P.J. Williams can also give you some help at the nickel position as well. So he's been fantastic from a versatility standpoint. He was banged up a lot last year. But I think the safety room is about the same as last year. I mean, I really do. I think it's about the same.
How do you feel? Do you feel like maybe going into this next season, May and Matthew do they slow down at all? Do you think they're able to keep building?
See, I hope they pick up where they left off from a season ago because I kind of felt like their chemistry took a while to figure out, and by the second half of the season they did, and it ended up being a top 10 defense.
Yeah.
So I'm looking for them to be better this year. I really am. Specialist, Will Lutz, Blake Gillikin, Zach Wood. Will Lutz took the pay cut to come back. He's got to do better. Blake Gillikin, I think he had a little up and down season. Zach Wood, you don't hear anything about him. That's a good thing when you're talking about a long snapper. Some of their, unsigned guys that are still out there. We talked about Contavia Street, Malcolm Roach. Andrew Dowell is the special teams linebacker.
Yep.
P.J. Williams, Chase Hansen, Marquez Callaway. Dwayne Washington is another special teams guy, running back as well. So let's just go through it. Better at quarterback, better at running back, better at wide receiver, at very least the same at tight end. All things healthy, I think they're better at offensive line, or if they're healthier, I think they're better at offensive line. Defensive end, D-tackle, right now it's a downgrade because they don't have enough bodies. Once they fill that room, I think I'll feel differently. Linebacker, a slight step down. Feel great at corner. Good at safety.
Yeah.
Good at specialist, although I don't feel great because I thought Lutz could have been better a season ago.
Hopefully he bounces back.
Hopefully there's a bounce back. But that injury he had a couple years ago, sometimes those kickers don't return well from that. So I think overall, now that we read out the names to you, I think overall it's a net positive. Now, here's a couple other things I want to discuss. It won't be long. We'll wrap it up here soon. We keep talking about the weakness of the NFC South. But the NFC South, everyone in the NFC South had the same thought. The division is attainable. So every team is trying to get better. And I don't think the NFC South, you're going to be able to win it with 8 and 9 like they did a season ago. I don't think it's going to be as bad this year as it was a season ago. So whoever wins it is going to have to win it. They're not just going to coast through it. They're going to have to win it.
Yep.
But I do think, now look, Carolina's doing some interesting things. Atlanta certainly spent some money. Tampa Bay's in a little bit of an interesting spot. I don't know if they're rebuilding or what. But as it stands right now, and there's more to go, and we'll get into it as it comes, I think the Saints are in a good spot to compete in the NFC South, and by that, the NFC. Let me check Twitter one more time, make sure we're not missing anything.
We both had our phones sitting on our thighs here, just like
I think we're
making
good
sure
right
we
now.
didn't miss anything. I think we're good.
I
Yeah.
think we're good at the moment. So, all right, let's send it home.
All right. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Remember to like, subscribe, rate, review, share. All of that helps. For Sean, I'm Vasilios. We'll catch you guys next time on an episode of the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast.